fish and chips. This traditional pairing only became the standard in the 1860s. Before that time, fried fish and chips were sold separately by different vendors on the streets of London. The practice of frying fish originated with Jewish immigrants fleeing persecution. Chips were influenced by Belgian traditions, and the two combined in London's working-class neighborhoods. This combination spread through industrial towns as a cheap, filling meal for factory workers who needed quick energy. Fresh cod flakes into perfect white chunks when the muscle fibers separate during the frying process in hot oil. It remains the most recognized British food globally, found in every British pub and seaside town. But chips were not the only thing Brits wrapped in newspaper for takeaway meals. Bangers and mash. Bangers earned their name because cheap wartime sausages contained so much water that they literally exploded in the pan with loud pops. The sausage-making tradition dates back to medieval times. Mashed potatoes were added when potatoes arrived from the Americas in the 16th century. This became a pub standard when potatoes proved to be cheaper than bread for working families struggling to make ends meet. Sausage casings are traditionally made from clean sheep intestines that stretch like natural balloons when stuffed with meat. Every British pub menu features it today, often served with rich onion gravy poured over the top. Speaking of things that pop and sizzle in hot pans, the full English breakfast. The full breakfast was actually invented by hotels in the 1950s as a marketing gimmick. Victorian breakfasts were much simpler affairs, consisting of just bread and tea for most families. It started as a hearty farm breakfast to fuel long days of physical labor and expanded during Victorian prosperity. Hotels marketed it to tourists as an authentic British experience they could not get anywhere else. Black pudding gets its dark color from pig blood that coagulates when heated in the pan. It is a weekend tradition in homes across Britain, with all-day breakfasts served in cafes and greasy spoons. But some British foods hide their true nature even better than this hearty morning meal. Shepherd's pie. Real shepherd's pie uses lamb meat exclusively. If it is made with beef, it is technically cottage pie according to traditional definitions. It was created in the late 1700s as a clever way to use leftover roasted meat, often from Sunday dinner leftovers. It became a standard comfort food in working-class homes across Britain and Ireland during the Industrial Revolution. The potato topping forms golden peaks when fork marks create extra surface area for browning in the oven. It is a comfort food staple today, with frozen versions available in every supermarket freezer section across the country. Another dish that is all about using what is left over from previous meals is the Cornish Pasty. The thick pastry crust was designed as a disposable handle for miners working underground. Miners would eat the filling and throw away the dirty crust contaminated with arsenic from their hands. Originating in Cornwall tin mines in the 1200s, it was designed specifically for workers who could not wash their hands during long shifts. Miners carried the tradition to Australia, Mexico, and American mining towns during gold rush periods. Proper crimping creates 20-plus folds that seal completely without any gaps to prevent the filling from leaking out. It is a protected status food under European law. Only pasties made in Cornwall can be called a Cornish pasty legally. But not all British foods were designed for dirty hands and dangerous working conditions. Bubble and squeak. The name comes from the actual sounds it makes in the pan during cooking. It bubbles and squeaks as moisture escapes from the vegetables hitting hot fat. This was an 1800s way to use leftover vegetables from Sunday roast dinner without wasting precious food. It became a Monday tradition in households across Britain as families stretched their weekly food budget. Cabbage leaves release steam through their natural pores, creating the signature sounds that gave the dish its name. It is still made every Monday in traditional British homes that follow old customs. The sounds of cooking lead us to something much quieter and more refined: steak and kidney pie. The kidneys are not just thrown in for flavor. They actually help tenderize the beef during the long cooking process. Medieval England used organ meats that would otherwise spoil quickly in an era before refrigeration. It became a pub food staple when taverns needed hearty meals that could simmer all day without constant attention. Kidney enzymes break down tough beef fibers, creating tender meat that falls apart with a fork. It is traditional pub fare across Britain, often served with thick gravy and mushy peas on the side. From organ meat chemistry to something that never sees heat during preparation. Jellied eels. The jelly forms naturally from eel bones during the cooking process, with no gelatin added. The fish creates its own aspic when cooled to room temperature. This is a London East End tradition using cheap protein from Thames eels caught fresh from the river daily. It stayed mostly in London and never spread widely across Britain, despite attempts to popularize it elsewhere. Eel bones contain natural collagen that turns liquid when heated and solid when cooled, creating the jelly texture. It is still sold from traditional pie and mash shops in East London that have operated for generations, from natural jelly formation to something artificially preserved through different methods. Haggis. It is cooked inside a sheep's stomach, which acts like a natural pressure cooker and keeps everything moist. Originating in Scotland during medieval times, it used every part of the animal to avoid waste in harsh Highland conditions. It became a symbol of Scottish identity, especially for Burns Night celebrations across the world every January. The sheep's stomach lining is naturally waterproof and expands like a balloon when filled with the oatmeal mixture. Burns Night dinners occur worldwide, with Scottish restaurants from Edinburgh to New York serving authentic versions. From Scotland's national dish to England's most expensive culinary creation, Beef Wellington. Named after the Duke of Wellington, who defeated Napoleon, the dish costs more than most people's weekly food budget. It involves a French technique adapted for British tastes and was popularized in high-end restaurants during the 20th century revival. It became a symbol of fine dining skill that separates amateur cooks from professional chefs. Many chefs judge each other by their Wellington technique and presentation standards. Puff pastry creates hundreds of paper-thin layers that trap steam and puff up during the careful baking process. It is a restaurant challenge dish and a Gordon Ramsay signature creation featured on television cooking shows worldwide. From the most expensive restaurant dish to something that costs almost nothing to make, bread and dripping. This Depression-era food is now served in trendy restaurants as artisanal heritage cuisine with fancy names. It is the same exact recipe but 100 times the price in upscale establishments charging premium rates. It was a working-class necessity using leftover fat from Sunday roasts to make cheap meals stretch through the week. It kept families fed during wartime rationing and nearly disappeared completely. Now it is returning as the heritage food movement gains momentum. Animal fat solidifies into white crystals when cold and melts clear when warmed and spread on toast. Hipster cafes and nose-to-tail restaurants now charge premium prices for what was once poverty food. From recycled fat to carefully controlled fermentation processes in modern cheese making. Stilton cheese. The blue veins are created by piercing the cheese with copper wires during the careful aging process. The metal helps the mold spread evenly throughout the wheel in controlled patterns. Originating in Stilton Village in the 1700s, ironically, it can no longer be made there due to strict legal restrictions. It became one of the only British cheeses with protected status under European law, protecting traditional methods. Penicillium roqueforti mold needs oxygen channels to grow its characteristic blue-green threads through the dense cheese. It appears on Christmas cheese boards across Britain and in high-end restaurants served with port wine and crackers. From controlled mold cultivation to controlled timing in the kitchen, Yorkshire pudding. The secret is putting the batter into smoking hot oil that sizzles immediately on contact with the mixture. If the oil is not hot enough, it stays flat forever and never rises properly. Originating in the Yorkshire region, it was cooked under roasting meat to catch the drippings and add rich flavor to the batter. It became a Sunday roast essential across all of Britain within just a few generations of its invention. Hot oil instantly sets the bottom while steam puffs up the sides, creating the characteristic bowl shape. It is part of every Sunday roast dinner today, now often made in individual muffin tins instead of one large pan. But the strangest British food breaks every rule we know about cooking and food preparation. Toad in the hole. Despite the name, no amphibians are involved. It is just sausages baked inside Yorkshire pudding batter. The dish got its name because the sausages poking through the risen batter look like toads emerging from holes. It was an 18th century invention when cooks realized they could stretch expensive meat by surrounding it with cheap batter. It became a working class favorite because one dish provided both meat and starch in a single pan. The batter rises around the sausages, creating pockets that trap the meat juices and fat for extra flavor. It is still served in pubs across Britain, often with onion gravy and vegetables on the side. From amphibian names to something made from brewery waste, Marmite, it is made from the leftover yeast sludge from beer brewing operations across the country. Literally, it is the waste product that breweries used to throw away before someone figured out its potential value. In Burton-upon-Trent in 1902, a German scientist figured out how to make the waste edible and surprisingly nutritious. It became a uniquely British obsession and never caught on anywhere else despite aggressive marketing attempts worldwide over decades. Dead yeast cells break down into glutamates during the complex processing that transforms waste into food. These are the same compounds that make Parmesan cheese addictive to human taste buds and create umami flavor. The love it or hate it marketing campaign became a cultural phenomenon, and the product is found in every British kitchen. If these culinary stories change the way you look at the food on your plate, please subscribe and like the channel. We are digging up the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds for the future. The next treasure trove of history will be opened soon.